Hey, Social Work Tribe, welcome back. In today's video, we're going to be doing part 2 of the NASW Code of Ethics breakdown, so stay tuned. 1.03, Informed Consent. A, social workers should provide services to clients only in the context of a professional relationship based, when appropriate, on valid informed consent. Social workers should use clear and understandable language to inform clients of the purpose of the services, risks related to the services, limits to services because of the requirements of a third-party payer, relevant costs, reasonable alternatives, clients' right to refuse or withdraw consent, and the time frame covered by the consent. Social workers should provide clients with an opportunity to ask questions. Okay, so let's really, I know this could be like, wait, I heard third party, what, who's that, blah. I got you guys. So again, just kind of breaking it down bit by bit. Social workers should provide services to clients only in the context of a professional relationship base. So we want to make sure that it's occurring in the appropriate business professional manner, not providing it in an environment that's not the professional, like in an office or things of that nature. When appropriate, on valid informed consent. So when they talk about valid informed consent, and this goes into the next sentence as well, of saying all the paperwork has been signed, like all the HIPAA stuff and all the understanding is understood between the client and the therapist. That includes the fee, again, signing all the forms like the HIPAA compliance form and all that great stuff, right? And social workers should use clear and understandable language to inform clients of the purpose of the services. So we want to make sure that both the social worker and the client are on the same page. There's no confusion about, the types of services that's going to be provided. Let's say in the context of therapy, right? This is when we're going to meet. This is the cost, the fee for services. And when it goes into the limits of it, right? Where it says limits to the risk related to the services, limits to services because of the requirements of a third-party payer. So part of the limits of a third-party payer, it's usually referring to insurance companies, right? That's the third-party payer. So let's say you're at a setting where you're providing services as the social worker, and someone wants to pay for those services via their insurance, whatever insurance provider they have. Because the insurance is paying for it, they have a say in being able to essentially see that information, see what type of services are being provided, how that person is doing, etc. Now, that potential client, because again, they're not officially a client yet, that potential client could say, no, I don't want my insurance or anyone involved. And on the insurance end, they could say, okay, fine, but we're not paying for it. And because of how much these services tend to cost, usually people want to use their insurance. So they sign off. Again, they have to sign off on it when filling out the paperwork and everything before any services begin. They sign off on it saying, yes, I give permission for my insurance company to be able to obtain information. So for example, at an outpatient facility I used to work at, when a client would come in, right, they're authorized X amount of days to receive therapy services. And if they need more days, more therapy service days, we would get authorization, which is essentially speaking with the insurance companies, saying the progress, how they've been progressing so far, and advocating for more days. And then the insurance company can say, okay, we'll give them X amount more days based off of the progress they've been making, or in, the amount of time they still need. And then we'll proceed that way. So again, relevant costs, reasonable alternatives, client's right to refuse or withdraw consent. So when we're getting consent is permission. We're getting permission from the client to say, hey, you agree, and we want to make sure that they understand everything. You agree, the client that is, for us to be able to provide you services, and here's all the details, all the information you need, the fees, all of it, right? And then when we go into the rights to refuse or withdraw consent, at any time they can say, you know what, I don't want this person involved in my care to know information about the services I'm receiving. So let's say someone signs a release of information, pretty much giving the social worker permission to reach out to whoever that person or agency or organization is, right? Let's say they gave permission for you to speak with a family member, right? They signed it, they documented everything. They said you could talk about all this stuff, right? And then let's say 2 weeks later, the client said, actually, I want to take back that consent. I want to take back that release. I don't want you to be able to communicate with that person or that agency or organization anymore. Then they have the route to do that. And we would just proceed from there. So we would, withdraw the consent and the time frame covered by the consent. So again, the time frame is how long are we able to communicate with that person, that agency, that organization? It could be, a couple months, could be a year, and depending on who that person is and everything that's going on. But we want to make sure that they understand it. Just because they sign, the client that is, just because they give us permission, sign the paperwork and everything saying we, the social workers, have permission to speak with that other party, doesn't mean it lasts forever. Like we can always speak with them for as long as they live, type of thing. And social workers should provide clients with an opportunity to ask questions. So we want to make sure that they have a solid understanding of everything that was discussed, the services, like everything, because we don't want any surprises. And again, social workers, reflecting back on 1.01, client's best interest at heart, right? We don't want, the clients not having an understanding of the thing that we're going to be providing them to help them. So we definitely want them to be able to ask questions. B, in instances when clients are not literate or have difficulty understanding the primary language used in the practice setting, social workers should take steps to ensure clients' comprehension. So pause for a second. What happens if we get a question on the exam that says that puts us, the social worker, in a scenario where the client, for whatever the reason may be, a language barrier, cognitive understanding, they're not simply understanding the information we're trying to convey to them? What should the social worker do? So according to B, in instances when clients are not literate or have a difficulty understanding the primary language used in the practice setting, social workers should take steps to ensure clients' comprehension. This may include providing clients with a detailed verbal explanation or arranging for a qualified interpreter or translator whenever possible. So if we get a question that's speaking to a language barrier, what should the social worker do first, next? That it will be the best thing, get a qualified interpreter or translator whenever possible. And what about C? In instances when clients lack the capacity to provide informed consent, social workers should protect clients' interests by seeking permission from an appropriate third party. So an appropriate third party could be, let's say, the close family members, right? Let's say a client was, brought in by their parents or, their spouse, someone that would be considered an appropriate third party. Informing clients' consent with their level of understanding. In such instances, social workers should seek to ensure that the third party acts in a manner consistent with clients' wishes and interests. So again, making sure that they're not trying to manipulate them in any way. That's why we want to make sure it's appropriate. We're not just going to get some random family member or random friend that, we never heard of or anything like that. So that's what I'm saying, make sure it's appropriate. Social workers should take reasonable steps to enhance such clients' ability to give informed consent. Because again, in social work, we work with so many different types of populations, so many different types of people, right? Where these challenges may come up. And specifically speaking to the exam, if these type of questions come up when we're attempting to get informed consent from the client, but there's barriers, whether it's cognitive barriers, language barriers, or just simply just not understanding, because it's like, what is all this language and everything like that? Social workers want to be able to explain to them the best way possible, us, the social workers, and get an interpreter if it's a language barrier. And if there's other barriers, seeing if we get a third party that has their best interest at heart. In instances when clients are receiving services involuntarily, social workers should provide information about the nature and extent of services and about the extent of clients' right to refuse services. Hey, Ray, what do we do if we get a question when a client is receiving services involuntarily? And, we're supposed to promote self-determination, right? The client could do whatever they want. Yes, clients can technically do whatever they want, right? No one's like holding them down and making them do anything. But again, D, in instances when clients are receiving services involuntarily, meaning the court, the judge said, hey, to the client, you got to attend those anger management classes. You got to attend those classes, whatever those classes, services, whatever they may be. Social workers should provide information about the nature and extent of services and about the extent of the client's right to refuse it. Because if a judge is saying to the client, hey, you have to attend these services, right? Because if you don't, legal consequences happen. We want to make sure like, hey, just so you know, us social workers speaking to the client, are you aware of the consequences? Like, let's say if a client wanted to leave the anger management class in the middle of it, was like, I don't want to be here. Da, da, da. We want to say as social workers, like, hey, you're aware, like, you know, of the consequences, the legal ramification of you leaving and everything, right? And if they're like, I don't care, forget that judge and all, and it's like, all right. And our hands are tied because again, they're there involuntarily. It's not like they came there on their own free whim and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I want to see about my anger. Because then absolutely they could leave. We're not going to force them to be there or anything. But again, if they're receiving services involuntarily, not voluntary on their own free whim, the rules change a bit. Social workers should discuss with clients the social workers' policies concerning the use of technology and the provision of professional services. So technology, we know the world we live in, it's a thing. So we just want to make sure that, you know, they understand the policies regarding if technology is going to be used and everything like that. Because again, it's just the state of the world we live in. Social workers who use technology to provide social work services should obtain informed consent from the individuals using these services during the initial screening or interview and prior to initiating services. Social workers should assess clients' capacity to provide informed consent, and when using technology to communicate, verify the identity and location of the clients. So let's work backwards a little bit. So that last sentence where social workers should assess clients' capacity to provide informed consent, essentially making sure that they know what they're getting into, make sure they have a full understanding of how services are going to be provided and the use of technology. And when using technology to communicate, verify the identity and location of clients. Remember, we're limited, social workers that is, to provide services by the state we're located in. So for example, I have my own private practice. I provide therapy services within the state of New Jersey via telehealth, right? So online. I can't provide services to someone that lives in New York, Arizona, North Carolina, right? Because I only have a license in New Jersey. Now, if I had a license, you know, in multiple states, in other states, I can provide services in those states that I'm licensed in, but only states that I'm licensed in. So that's why, because it's technology, we're not in person in front of each other. That's why when we're providing the services, we have to confirm, hey, are you in New Jersey? Where you at? Okay, cool. We're good to go, right? Because let's say if they said, oh, I'm in, you know, New York, or I'm in South Carolina or something like that, then we would explain to them, hey, the limitations of our licensure, we can only provide services in the state that we're licensed in. So we're unable to provide services at this time. Let me know when you essentially get back in the state that you're licensed in so you can continue providing the services. And jumping back up to the first sentence for F, social workers who use technology to provide social work services should obtain informed consent from the individuals using these services during the initial screening or interview and prior to initiating services. So again, this is all happening in the beginning stage, right? Letting them know that, hey, here's the, like with the HIPAA paperwork and all of that stuff, right? A technology consent as well, saying, hey, just so you know, we'll be providing services with the use of technology. You know, are you okay with that? Do you have any questions? Do you know how to use that? And if they agree, then they'll sign off on that. So again, getting all of that information, giving all that information up front, making sure they have a firm, solid understanding of everything. And like it was said earlier, leaving a space for the client or clients to ask any questions so we can clarify anything. G, social workers who use technology to provide social work services should assess the client's suitability and capacity for electronic and remote services. So again, just saying, you know, Do they know how to use everything properly? Are they? Is it going to be beneficial, etc.? Social workers should consider the client's intellectual, emotional, and physical ability to use technology to receive services and ability to understand the potential benefits, risk, and limitations of such services. So again, make sure they have a really good grasp of everything. And when they talk about the risk, the limitation, like think of D, all of the above. Since we're not in person, because again, they're saying they're using technology if we're providing services that way, there's other factors that go into it. And again, the potential if like there could be a breach in the system and everything, because it's through, technology, the system could like shut down. And like if there's a internet shortage or something like that. So we're just making sure that they understand all this information. If clients do not wish to use services provided through technology, social workers should help them identify alternative methods of service. And, that's fair because, I know within recent time, a lot of things just kind of went online and, a lot of people may not want that. And if that's what we're providing, services via technology, and the client is just kind of like, nah, I'm okay. I don't really, I just prefer not to do that. That's fine. And we will want to assist them by providing them resources, possibly connecting them with other providers that, do in person or something that would just benefit them as a whole. H, social workers should obtain clients' informed consent before making audio or video recordings of clients or permitting observation of service provision by a third party. Hey, Ray, what happens if we get a question about, getting informed consent? Are we allowed to, record the client in any capacity? Technically, yes, if we get clients informed consent before making any audio or video recordings of clients or permitting observations. So like, let's say if you had like a intern or whoever that wanted to kind of sit in and observe the services being provided, we can't just bring somebody in and then you're like, oh yeah, this is just so-and-so. Because the client could be like, who that? I don't know this person. I don't know those people. They're just here all of a sudden. So we want to get permission for them to explain. And this is just a scenario where like, hey, this is, intern. Is it okay if they sit in? And the client can say, yeah, that's cool. That's, no worries. And, or they could be like, no, I'm honestly, I'm not really okay with another person like hearing some of the things we're talking about. So again, get informed consent. Can you record a client? Can a third party like an intern sit in on the services being provided, like a session or anything? Yes, if we get informed consent first. And social workers should obtain client consent before conducting electronic search of the client. Hey, Ray, can we do a Google, YouTube, internet web search of the client? Yes, if we get informed consent. Again, social workers should obtain client consent before conducting an electronic search of the client. Exceptions may arise when the search is for purpose of protecting the client or others from serious, foreseeable, and imminent harm, or for other compelling professional reasons. So again, safety above all. Safety above all. If it's not a safety issue where we need to do a search because it's like, oh, they're about to like hurt somebody, is a foreseeable imminent risk, right? All of that, or themselves. Then like we gotta like do some type of search to kind of find them, locate them, let someone else know, etc. Different. Safety aside, because again, safety is above all. Safety aside, we need that informed consent. And when they say, or other compelling professional reasons, earlier, if you guys checked out part 1 of the NASW breakdown, it can't and it doesn't capture everything, right? Because there's so many different scenarios that could happen, the context, everything. There could be a situation that could arise where it's like, it may not be a safety concern, but that's a really compelling reason why we do need to do a web search in some form to locate that person and, address it appropriately. So again, that's why they say it's compelling. That means where there's no confusion, this was needed. And the reason why this is here, because it's almost like an invasion of privacy, right? We essentially, don't know this client exists until they contact us seeking services, right? And we don't want to necessarily do background checks on them and get all this information, which is also influencing us to a degree and maybe how we provide services to them. And again, right, you know, it's different when you're already providing information to us within that space, but for us to like search them up and do this like almost like a background search, and whether it's just for like, oh, they have a YouTube channel, let me just search them up and see, and everything is, we want to respect their privacy, right? Again, if is it for a safety reason, is it for another professional compelling reason, then different. But if it's not one of those type of situations, let's honor and respect the client's right to privacy. Okay, social work tribe, that was it for today's video. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to tell a social work friend, because we don't want to be licensed by ourselves. And again, this is part 2 of the breakdown. We're really going to keep going through it so we have a really solid understanding of our guide, our blueprint, and it's really going to help us in how we approach the exam so that we can pass and become better social workers as a whole. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Okay, social work tribe, I'll see you next video. Bye.